class, this is Mrs. Norris, and I need you to try really hard not to watch this video unless you have a graphing calculator in front of you. If it's last resort and you just have to get the notes written down and then try to walk through it yourself tomorrow with a graphing calculator in the morning when you get to school, that's fine. Go ahead and write the notes down, but I really want you to try these with me. So if you have your graphing calculator out, I want you to notice that example 1, and this should match the one in the book, is asking us to graph the equation on a graphing calculator, and we're going to identify what we call which conic section it is, okay? Your choices are circle, ellipse. Okay, let's go over these real quick. An ellipse is just an elongated circle. A circle has a constant radius. The parabola is another one that you should know. That's the one that's shaped like a U. Okay, could be sideways like that. And the last one is what we call a hyperbola. Okay? A hyperbola is graph. These where your axis is split up like this. Okay, it's two U's that are split up. So when you graph it on your graphing calculator, I need you to know which one you're seeing. The second thing I want you to do on your graphing calculator, you should be writing all of this down, yes, is I want you to hit the zoom button, and I want you to make sure you select from the menu the word square. We need our graphing calculator to be in square mode, we call it. Okay, so step 1, every time for almost all your problems tonight, is just getting y by itself. So we just spent time talking about how to get rid of exponents. Let's go ahead and walk through the steps. This one's a little bit hard, of how you get y by itself. So my goal is to get this guy. First thing I'm going to do is subtract x minus 1 squared from both sides. When I do that, I'm left with y minus 1 quantity squared equals 1 minus parentheses x minus 1 quantity squared. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of both sides. That gives me a y minus 1 on this side, and it gives me plus or minus. This is one of the most important parts. Okay, I'm probably going to get candy out for this, somebody who remembers this tomorrow. One of the most important parts is to take the square root and make it plus or minus. 1 minus parentheses x minus 1 quantity squared. And now we're going to add 1 to both sides, so my final answer is y equals 1 plus or minus the square root of all of that stuff. Okay? Now, the next step is to take out your graphing calculator, and under the Y1 button, I want you to type in the positive version of the square root of all of that. 1 minus parentheses x minus 1 parentheses squared. Then for y sub 2, I want you to type in the negative version. Okay? Alright, take a minute and do that. Pause if you need to. After you type that in, this is what you should get. Your graph, more notes about zoom circle, zoom square, should look like this, okay? The top picture is a picture of what the graph looks like as long as you click to zoom square, and the bottom picture is what your table will look like when you hit second graph. The reason we're getting so many errors here is because for these inputs, the negative, there's no graph there, so that's why it says error. For anything above 2, 3 and on, over here, there's no graph there, so it says error. We finish this problem by saying we have a circle. We're going to describe what the intercepts are, they call it. Okay, so let me change colors here. Let me use green. I'm just going to go ahead and use black. Our intercepts are the point where it crosses the axes. So one of my intercepts is 1, 0. And one of my intercepts is 0, 1. That's important because this is going to help us graph circles later. And then finally, my center of my circle, which is the other thing you have to write for this one, is at 1, 1. You should be able to get all of this from your graph. These are called the intercepts. Okay? write that a little bit better so you can at least read it here. Intercepts. Okay, let's do another example. The second example that we're going to graph, I've already done the algebra here, but I'll walk you through it real quick. This is a different function, right? And we're going to solve for y again. Step 1's always the same. So you can take a minute and get this algebra copy down, and look what I did. Subtracted 4x squared here. Then I'm left with 25y squared, so I divide by 25, and then I take the square root of all of that. Okay? I want to talk to you about this messy step here. This messy step can also be written as 100 over 25 minus 4 over 25 times x squared. This can be simplified as 4, and that's where I got that 4 right there. If you type in the positive version as y1 on your calculator, and the negative version is y2 on your calculator of this circled thing here, what happens is, if you remember to click zoom square, most important thing besides doing plus or minus is remembering to hit zoom square, you're going to notice this graph. This graph is clearly not a circle, and this is why you need to be in zoom square. What this graph is called an ellipse. So your answer would be an ellipse. Now, there are certain things they want about the ellipse. They want the intercepts. How many times does an ellipse, this particular ellipse, cross the x-axis? Well, it crosses right here and right here. So my intercepts are at, there's 4 of them. There's 2 x's and 2 y's. The x-intercepts are at 5, 0, negative 5, 0. And the y-intercepts are at 0, 2, and 0, 0, negative 2. That's these points here. Again, you can get them straight from your graph. We'll talk about how that ties into the formula later. But those are your intercepts, and that's the only thing you have to give except for the center. So let's write the center of the ellipse is at 0, 0. Okay? Remember, center is right in the middle of the whole thing. The next one that we're going to do is this one, which is nice. It's already typed in as a y equals, because that's the formula for this type of function. If I type this in on my calculator, the graph that I get for this one is going to look like this. Now let's see what you remember about transformations before I put this on here. This negative, first of all, it's a quadratic, so it's a parabola. The negative tells me that it flips over, and then the 1/2 tells me that it gets a little bit wider. So the graph for this one is actually like this. So your answer to this one is, let's read the question. Graph each equation, identify the conic section, describe the vertices and the direction. So for this one, we just have to do the vertex. There's only one. It actually ends up being right at 0, 0. So we can say vertex at 0, 0. Whenever there's a parabola, there's only one vertex, by the way. And the direction is, down. And that would be the answer. You'd say parabola, vertex 0, 0, and it opens down. Okay, the last one. This is what the graph looks like. Example 2, one more example 2. This is the equation they want us to graph, so of course we got to get y equals. My first step is just to add x squared to both sides. Okay, this is the original equation. You should write it down. Then this is step 1. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides, and you remember, because you're really focusing now because you want candy, it's plus or minus the square root of 9 plus x squared. Okay? Remember, whenever you're trying to get to a variable and it's squared, you just have to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to type y1 equals the positive version of it. Please don't leave these square roots blank. You should be writing down the actual information inside of there. You should be writing 9 plus x squared. Then we're going to do the negative version of it in our calculator, and this is what we're going to get when we graph it. I graph this on my graphing calculator. I'm going to get a shape like this, and my other vertex is a shape like that. So what you have to write for this one is hyperbola opens vertically or up and down. I don't care which word you use. And it has vertices at 0, 3, and 0, -3. And that's the answer. Okay, we're going to do the other example type tomorrow. Make sure you have this written down. Again, it's really helpful if you practice typing this in on your calculator. And I will see you tomorrow.